Hi, this is Mary Greendale, and it's campaign season. Candidates are starting to be interviewed, and I want you to understand that when I interview these candidates, I am asking each candidate for an office the same questions. They get the questions in advance, they can prepare, and then we go through them. I have found this to be a good way to get a sense of how people respond to the questions in substance, and also how they differ between one candidate to another. The other thing, for candidates that are not opposed, I do not do interviews, but if they are brand new to town government, I do. And I do so because I believe that people have the right to know who's running their town government. And so we meet them, we talk to them, and we ask them a series of questions that's appropriate for their town office. So you will be able to watch these interviews at your leisure, and keep an eye out for them, and let's get going. Hi again, it's Mary Greendale and Just Thinking, and we're going to move on with the next interview. Our interview candidate today is Lisa Kocian. And Lisa is running for the school committee, re-election to the school committee. And Lisa, let's duck back to you and remind me, did you really run 6 years ago?
Yeah, time flies. That's what they always tell you, and they're not kidding, right?
No.
Yeah, my son was going into kindergarten, and he is now a fifth grader going to be starting at the middle school next year.
Wow.
Which
Wow.
blows my mind. Yep.
Well, you look like you've done well. You've survived it. You still look healthy and happy, and that's good. So, all right, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just because you've been on the school committee doesn't mean that we know everything we need to know about you. So why don't you tell us about
Right. So I'm originally from Texas, from South Texas, which tends to give me a very different perspective than people who grew up in New England. Our schools were not as strong when I was growing up. Public schools were nowhere near what they are now. And I moved to Holliston, got married in 2008 to my husband, Jim, moved to Holliston in 2009, had our son in 2010. So we've been here, God, what is that, 12 years? Yeah, 12 years in Holliston. And I was interested in running for school committee, I think mostly because I had been a reporter at the Boston Globe for 13 years, and I covered a lot of education issues. So I sat through countless school committee meetings, town meetings, all over the greater Boston area. And that gave me one perspective on education policy. And I thought it would be really interesting to be sitting on the other side of it and see what it looked like. And I expected it to look different. I don't think I expected it to look as dramatically different as it does sitting from this perspective. But, you know, it's been a wild ride, especially this past year. But it's just, you know, it's so interesting. And the people who work in town government are so committed and so great. And I've learned so much, particularly about how to be an effective advocate. You know, that's one thing that, you know, I always felt like I could write. As an advocate, I knew how to write what I felt, but now I feel like I understand kind of the behind the scenes, how to advocate for issues you really care about. And that took a while. There's a steep learning curve on school committee.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's true of any of the committees. I don't have any personal experience with school committee. I know I found that the learning curve on the Board of Assessors has been amazingly challenging. Yeah. Really. It's good exercise for a senior's brain. Anyway, so you said you've lived here about 12 years. Now, were the schools a consideration in making that move to Holliston?
Definitely. I had actually covered Holliston a little bit. I was familiar with the Montessori and French immersion programs. I had written a story about the French immersion program, I think. And so I was looking to live in this area, and we looked around at, you know, we looked at Natick and Hopkinton and Medfield and Millis and all the surrounding towns, with the exception of Sherburne, which we definitely knew we couldn't afford. And, you know, this had such a warm feeling to it. And I just felt like there was a really solid sense of community. I felt like the schools were really strong. I liked that they had, all the different programs. And I had just an all-around great impression of Holliston.
That's great. So why run again? This will be your third term. Why are you rerunning?
Yeah, I had to think long and hard about this one. It's been a rough year, but I think that I feel like I've learned so much now. I've been on the budget subcommittee the last couple of years. I've been deeply involved in wellness. I redrafted a whole new wellness policy a couple of years ago to bring it into the 21st century. I've worked with Diverse Holliston on, ways to reimagine how we teach our kids in a very different era. And I've worked with CPAC, the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, on just helping parents better understand IEPs. And I've gotten really interested too on in the gap between children who don't need an IEP and children who do need an IEP. And there's this middle gray area where there are a lot of kids who haven't yet qualified for an IEP, and maybe they never will, but because technically, there are legal reasons that qualify someone for an IEP. But there are often some social and emotional issues going on that need to be addressed in order for those kids to really access learning. And so I've gotten really interested in that in the last couple of years as well. But in terms of your question, that was a long way of answering. I feel like I've invested so much in all these different areas, and I've learned a lot, and I just feel like I still have a lot to give. I still have a lot of work to do. I would feel strange stepping away at this point. I'm the only one of my cohort of 3 of us who are up for re-election. I'm the only incumbent running. So I would feel like I was, dropping the ball. I would feel like I was, dropping the ball in terms of my colleagues and continuing to do the work that I've started.
So what do you think are those specific skills that you have that you bring? Obviously, as a writer, you're probably good in communicating, but
yeah, communicating has been challenging though, because, I think that I am someone who always wants to be just very straightforward and transparent. And you can do that to an extent. You cannot fully engage that way, unfortunately, which has been really frustrating for me. And there's 2 reasons for that. One reason is that you are part of a group. I am one of 7. So I have to always be careful in anything I'm talking about and saying, I'm speaking only for myself here, not speaking for the rest of the board. And even then, you run the risk of, casting a certain light on issues that come before the school committee. If you say every last thought in your mind, especially on social media, because you are one of the people who's going to be voting on it. And this has been particularly tough with the contract negotiations. And that was the second point I was going to bring up. That's in a whole different category because, not only am I one of 7, we're in mediation. And, the negotiating process is designed so that you're supposed to be talking about everything and negotiating everything at the table. You're not supposed to be, bringing it out into the public sphere. That's how it's designed to work. And that runs counter to everything that I'm about, because I just want to be, completely transparent and straightforward and put it all out there and let people decide. And that's just it's not how it always works. But I do think that my communication skills, I do think that my pushing for things to be as transparent as they possibly can be has been helpful. I think that, we had a big challenge on the new school start times, and I don't think we handled it in the best way when we first made the decision. And that was largely because we were putting out a ton of information and we weren't getting a lot of questions. We didn't think people were really paying attention or cared that much. And that was wrong. That was a big assumption that was wrong. But as soon as it became apparent, though, that was wrong, I was out in the forefront saying, we have to do a do-over. Let's hold a public hearing. Let's rethink this. Let's look at these other pieces of information that have come up that we weren't looking at before. Let's reconsider this. And, I think the fact that I'm not afraid to say, especially as a volunteer, I think you got to be willing to say, all right, we could have done that better. Let's go make it better. Because, we all, as a volunteer especially, I think that, we're juggling jobs and family life and all the things that everybody else is. And being on school committee is a huge volunteer commitment. It's not a minor couple of hours a week kind of thing. It's a big commitment. And I think that you have to be open to the possibility that you're not going to get it right every time. And I think when you don't get it right, take a step back and do what you can to fix it.
Okay. Now, in the time since your child, and I know you have only one, so I won't say children. Anyway, since you started here in school, in your opinion, have the schools gotten better, stayed the same, or have they slipped?
Both, all of it.
All of the above?
All of the above. I mean, clearly we've slipped in the rankings. And I think that, rankings matter because of property values. They matter for some good reasons, for all the traditional reasons. But on the other hand, I would argue that we've gotten stronger in terms of innovating and in terms of teaching kids those 21st century skills that you hear all of our administrators talk about so often. I don't remember off the top of my head who was president of the United States in 1849, but I know I can Google it in 2 seconds and tell you. Yeah. I think we have to be teaching kids how important creativity is, how important collaboration is, how important critical thinking is, and giving them the tools they need to exercise those muscles. I think that is how we're going to give our children the education they deserve. And I think we have done a really good job in pushing forward those sorts of things. So I would say that we have gotten much better in my time here in being more creative. I think that we have to be careful that, we're still preparing kids in the traditional way needed to get into college, because most of our kids are going to go to college. And until colleges, make changes in the way they view what children have learned, we can only go so far. So it's a compromise, you can't throw out the playbook and say, we're not going to think about curriculum in a traditional way just because we want to. We have state laws that govern all of this. But I do think you can push the envelope, and I think we are doing this in terms of finding ways to engage students, finding ways to teach all students, finding ways to teach children how to be good citizens. I really love the model they use at the middle school, the personal, local, global. I think it's important to teach kids what their local school committee does and, what their local government does. I think, civics is incredibly important. And, I think that we are in some ways things have gotten better, but I think we have a long way to go. And I think we should always have that mindset. We should always have the mindset that we always need to improve, because, that's how you grow and become better.
True. Bearing in mind that you are one of those 7 people, as you already mentioned, is there something in particular that you would hope to accomplish in this next term?
Lots. I'm looking forward to getting back to semi-normal next year. There were a lot of things that, we felt like we were, and God bless the teachers. I mean, I have nothing to complain about compared to what they went through, and all of our staff, paraprofessionals, administrators, everyone. I mean, they really had to scramble to, meet the needs of our kids. But from a school committee perspective, we were just trying to fix things, just scampering around, trying to get our heads around what was going on. So a lot of the things that we would normally do didn't happen. Like, we kind of let the wellness council, which is not, it's not part of the school committee, but I've sort of made it part of my work. We kind of let that go into dormancy because people just didn't have the bandwidth. But I do want to get back to that next year, because I think, it's really important to think about, what our kids are eating, how much physical activity they're getting, social emotional wellness. I think those are the 3 aspects of wellness that we've always focused on in the Wellness Council. And I think that we've helped to bring those issues to the forefront and keep them closer to the front burner, with COVID times as an exception. And I would, as things go back to normal, I would hope to get back to that work. I hope to, keep playing a big role on the budget committee. I've been on the budget subcommittee the last couple of years, and I feel like we've done a really solid job of repairing relationships with the FinCom and, getting back to a really good working relationship with them. It was kind of choppy there for a little while when I first came on the board. And I think that, I want to see us, just keep reaching. I want to see us, in my work with Diverse Holliston. I want to see us continuing the work that we started with Dr. Botello in terms of looking at the curriculum and looking at professional development. I was the liaison to both CPAC and Diverse Holliston. So I sat in on lots of meetings with Dr. Kuska and Dr. Botello, the superintendent and assistant superintendent, with Diverse Holliston to talk about, how we can move forward on looking at the curriculum and looking at professional development so that kids have a better sense and a more comprehensive sense as they go from pre-K to 12 of issues around social justice and racial equity. Because now you have, and some of this is already in place. We're already doing a little bit of this now in terms of professional development. And in terms of curriculum, you have some teachers who are just outstanding at delivering, a content that is diverse and forward thinking in that way. But I think that we have to make sure that, when a child goes through the whole system and graduates, they have a foundation for understanding how to be in the world, and how to live in a diverse, vibrant world. And I think it's even more incumbent on us in Holliston to do that because we are such a white community. Our kids aren't going to school surrounded by, as many different languages and cultures as they would be in the city, So I think that we want to make sure that we prepare them to work with all kinds of different people. I work with people. The job that I do now, I'm talking to people in, the UK, in all over Russia and the former Soviet Union. I mean, I get on Zoom calls with people from Minsk to Moscow to Kiev and, lots of places in between. And we have offices in, Mexico and literally all over the world. And that's the world now. And we have to prepare kids to live in that world. And when you're a little bit sheltered, like we are in Holliston, I think it's even more important.
Okay. So in your opinion, what are the school's two top assets?
The people, the community, and the staff. I mean, our teachers, our paraprofessionals, all the staff, the administrators, everyone who works in the schools. I've been so impressed with, everyone I've interacted with as my son's gone from grade to grade, and as I interact with people in terms of from a school committee perspective too, of course. I think we just have some amazing educators who are talented, caring, committed, creative. They're amazing. And that is absolutely one of our top assets. And then the community. I think this is a community that values education and a community that always wants to be doing better for its kids, and making sure that our kids are getting what they need now and are being prepared for the future and are open to whatever's next. So I would say the community and the staff at all the schools.
And what about liabilities? Got two of those?
Yeah, I think we definitely, budget issues are always a problem. And, I know you are well steeped in all of these issues. And I think that's one of the reasons why you've pushed for to do some better global planning for our community. I think that we have a lot of frustration around the tax base. You hear people complaining that taxes are too high, but at the same time, we spend, very little per pupil compared to a lot of other communities that are similar to Holliston. We have a very lean, group of administration. So we don't have as many administrators as a lot of other towns. So we don't spend a ton of money, and yet somehow we're always struggling
Agree.
to have enough money for everything that we want to do. And so I think that's, a huge liability. And I don't know what the answer is, but I hope that the planning exercises that, that I know you are supporting and pushing forward are successful in figuring out some of that. Because, I know there's a lot of people are very, very vehemently opposed to, 555, the Hoppy Brook development. And I'm totally sympathetic to that. It sounds like a lot of trucks, and it's definitely a ginormous project that would have a huge impact. But, we need, if not that, we need development in some kind of smart way if we don't want to rely just on our residential property tax base. We have to have more commercial or industrial of some sort if we're going to be able to keep the schools where I think people want them to be.
Okay. Is that one or two?
That's really the big one. I mean,
okay.
I wouldn't.
I'll let you off the hook.
Okay. Thank you.
So the other thing that's spinning around town, of course, is the whole negotiations thing. And I fully understand that there are limits within the confines of the rules, and the rules are pretty strict. During this whole process now, what experience have you had in that process or similar processes that you bring, provided you skills that you bring to whatever future situations like this may happen? I know you're in the midst of this one. For most of the candidates, this is a projection. You're in the midst of it. And, just kind of maybe a lesson learned or what you would hope to accomplish if you had the chance to do it again.
I have plenty to say on this. So, first and foremost, I have nothing but empathy for the teachers, and I'm sorry that this has dragged on for so long. There are a lot of reasons why it's dragged on, and that's where I can't go into that too deeply because that is the subject of mediation. But I was a union member for 13 years at the Boston Globe. In 2009, the New York Times threatened to shut us down unless we gave up $20 million in pay cuts. So I took somewhere between a 5 and 10% pay cut, I think, right away, that lasted for quite a while. And even by the time I left the Globe in 2013, I don't think I was quite back up. I don't think pay was back up to where it had been before that whole debacle. So I have, I've been in some tough union positions, and I believe in unions. I think that they are one of the last, defenses we have against income inequality in this country. I am very much in favor of unions. If this current contract negotiation were about how much we value the teachers, I would say let's double their salaries tomorrow. This is not about how much we value the teachers. This is about what the town can afford and what the town is willing to pay. And we are trying to be good financial stewards. We did not have to pink slip. We didn't furlough or lay off any teachers like a lot of surrounding towns did when the pandemic hit. And the reason we didn't is because, we've been conservative enough to not have to go there. And, I know that there's a lot of frustration among teachers. I have nothing but empathy, and I'm sad that it has become, I hope it's not as big a morale issue as it sometimes appears to be when I, go through my inbox. I'm very worried about it. I don't have a magic solution. I think there are a lot of misperceptions in the public. They've done a good marketing job with the keep your promise language, but it was never a promise. It was a tentative agreement. And we all know what the word tentative means. And it's really unfortunate that the timing worked out the way it did, because that tentative agreement had been signed by a couple of members of the school committee just before we closed schools, literally days before. And I think a lot of people just don't realize that, we're trying to sort it out. We're not trying to, as people who have kids in the schools, we have no incentive whatsoever to risk low morale or hard feelings among the staff of the Holliston Public Schools. I mean, that would be ludicrous. We just want to make sure we're making smart budget decisions for now and the next couple of years. Doing a contract negotiation is always a budget forecasting exercise, right? Like, we never know in a 3-year contract, what is year 3 going to look like? What's the economy going to be like? What are state revenues going to look like? What are, property taxes going to look like? It's always forecasting, but I think most people can appreciate that it's a lot more complicated when you're just coming out of a pandemic. Things are just, the economy, everything is more uncertain. So at the end of the day, I'm pro-union, and I'm hoping that, we come to an agreement quickly. We're in mediation now. I'm hoping we come to an agreement quickly that everyone can be satisfied with. And I'm sad we've gotten to the point that we have, but I really look forward to a resolution.
It's awkward and uncomfortable for everybody, I'm sure. Let me ask you, how would you address the issue of hazard pay for teachers?
In terms of payments specifically for teaching in the time of COVID?
Yeah, because you will be getting the town will be getting ARPA money that's targeted to the schools, and then there'll be ARPA money that will be targeted to the general government.
Yeah, so we don't have actually any word yet on ARPA money that's going to come directly to the schools. Our understanding has always been that all the federal money goes to the town, and we are not entitled to anything unless, it's released by the town. So we don't, there's no money that has come to us directly as far as I understand it. If that is something we can use the money for, sure. I mean, absolutely. That would be great if some of the ARPA money could be set aside as like a one-time bonus sort of thing. In my personal opinion, again, this is only my personal opinion. This has nothing to do with, I don't want to, really upset any of my fellow school committee members. I'm not speaking for anyone except for myself. But, I certainly think that would be appropriate. This has been an incredibly tough school year. And I can't imagine, not using that if we had it, if we have access to money that can be used in that way. And that's like, again, that gets back to some of the contract stuff and some of the frustrations we're having on the budget side. There's still so many unanswered questions. We don't know exactly. There hasn't been a ruling on the latest round of ARPA money. The Division of Local Services hasn't yet put out clear guidance on what that money can and can't be used for. So, that's frustrating. We're trying to make decisions, and we're trying to make budget decisions based, on guesses. Educated guesses, but still guesses. And that's a tough place to be in. So
now the schools did get CARES money, right? Schools got some CARES.
I don't think even that came directly to us, but we did get it. So 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Yes, we had CARES money for, and that went to things like all the extra deep cleaning that has to be done, personal protective equipment, there were a million things like that. And I think some of that money was even getting a little bit tight, just because there's so many expenses.
All right. Well, you're down to the last couple of minutes, so you get to use those for your final pitch.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I would just say that I've worked hard, and I've always tried to be a really good listener. I have always tried to do the work, do the research, listen to everybody, and make solid decisions based on all the information coming in. I am, it's an honor to be on the school committee. It's an honor to be a public servant. And I believe deeply in public service. And I hope that I am able to use the skills that I have now, which are so much stronger than when I started 6 years ago. I was very naive. I think the skills I have now are so much more useful to the next school committee. So I hope I get another shot. I do think that we have a lot of challenges ahead. We're going to be hiring a new assistant superintendent, and we still have a brand new superintendent. She hasn't been on the job even a year yet. I think we still have a lot of communication challenges to continue working on and figuring out. Obviously, the contract is going to be a big hurdle, and I think that there are a million different budget decisions that I would never have been able to appreciate in any way, shape, or form when I started this job that I've learned about. And, I just feel really strongly about advocating for our schools, for the teachers, for the staff, for the paraprofessionals, for the kids. I think a lot of people don't realize that a big part of our job is, advocating to the town, to the finance committee on behalf of the schools. And that means everything. That means, advocating for the teachers, for every piece of the puzzle. So, I enjoy doing this work, and I hope to keep doing it.
Sounds good. All right. Well, the election is May 25th, and folks will have an opportunity to vote for Lisa Kocian in the school committee race. So thank you very much, Lisa. I appreciate you joining me. And that's another interview and more to follow. So stay tuned. Thanks. Bye-bye.